breaking news stories we're covering for you this afternoon on the Jack Show. The Karmelo Anthony trial verdict and sentencing underway. Same jury, and that jury itself, a sort of disputed part of this case. It's interesting. The actual facts of the case are the least disputed thing, right? Numerous witnesses to one young man stabbing the other young man. Numerous witnesses consistently corroborating what was said and the interaction between them, which apparently was the very first encounter these two boys had ever had in their lives. And one of them winds up dead, and one of them winds up with maybe no future. And two shattered families. And yet around it is all this mishigas about the jury, the prosecution and defense, and then people outside this courthouse trying to amplify it into a race riot or, demonstrations and fights. And there's just a lot of people with an axe to grind, and they don't care about these kids, and they don't care about the facts. They see an opportunity. It's disgusting, but we have to brace ourselves for the fact that real trouble has happened in this country before for over not much more than this. The other thing we're following is the president vowing a response to Iran shooting down an Army Apache helicopter over the Strait of Hormuz. The president saying on Truth Social, there's no question Iran is responsible. Pilots were safe and uninjured, and we're told by Central Command that they were picked up by a drone ship that was able to go in and get them out of there. The attack on the helicopter may also have been a drone attack. So as we follow both of these stories, we come back to the Karmelo Anthony and the Collin County scene. We're joined now by Willie Ng, who's a former San Antonio police officer, formerly with the United States Secret Service, now has his own security company, Blue Armor Security. And Willie joins us on the KTSA Quarter Moon Plumbing AC Heating Newsmaker line. Willie, thanks for the time this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, Jack.
I know you have just a few minutes, but I wanted to kind of tap into your thoughts about it looks like there was a really strong, proactive response outside that courthouse, which might have prevented something, bad from happening, and hopefully will continue to do so, right?
Yes, I get it. We have a young individual who lost his life and another one who may be incarcerated for the rest of his life. So I know there's a lot of emotions going on there and a lot of accusations of racism and, the jury makeup and so many different things that are going on with this case.
Do you, I know you work a lot with schools in terms of safety in the school, safety in the grounds, active shooter training, self-defense for students and faculty. What were your thoughts when you heard about this case last year, the incident in the pop-up tent at the track meet? I mean, what kind of went through your head as somebody that works with school safety a lot?
Well, the response or the reaction didn't match the threat, right? We talk about that all the time. Being shoved or even being struck does not justify deadly force. And so I was already kind of looking at this case, and in my thoughts, as the evidence was coming out, I just felt that it wasn't going to be justified. His actions would not be justified in this particular case. So I'm not surprised with the verdict.
And I thought it was interesting that the defense was saying it was a legal knife, when isn't the larger point that you can't have a knife on those grounds?
That is correct. And, to me, that's smoke and mirrors, right? Because the argument isn't whether it was a legal or illegal knife. The argument is, was it justified to use it? I don't care if it was a butter knife. If you use a butter knife and you stab someone to death with it because they shoved you, it doesn't mean you're more justified because it was a legal knife to carry.
I mean, I haven't heard anybody, and usually there, with all the cable channels and all the shows, usually there's somebody who, maybe just to be a contrarian, makes the other argument. But I really haven't heard anybody credibly explain how this could have rose to the level of self-defense.
Well, yeah, they can't make the argument. They can't justify it. I mean, with this witness statements and the little bit of video they have, there's no justification to use deadly force on somebody being pushed. Usually deadly force is to prevent imminent death of yourself or another person, serious bodily injury, a sexual assault, and some specific violent felonies. This doesn't fit any of that, and so it's not a justified response or reaction. And that is why they couldn't give a defense. And that's why they were talking about, well, it was a legal knife, and they were just trying to sway the jurors to distract them.
The other thing I've been thinking about today is there were boys who were on the team or classmates of Austin Metcalf, the victim. Some of them were white, some of them were black. I think about a dozen of them testified. We didn't have cameras in the courtroom, so we only have secondhand accounts of this, but they, some of them wept, including some of the black students. They wept for Austin. They wept because they knew him and they loved him. And I keep thinking about how inside the courtroom, this was a very cut and dried, fact-based case, whereas outside the courthouse, it's turning into a clash of narratives that already existed and axes that were already being ground. And you can't help but see the contrast, right, between these boys and what's happened in their lives, these families and what's, devastated both of them, and then people just pouncing on it and trying to make, hay while the sun shines.
Well, unfortunately, it's the society we live in, right? They all move off of emotions, or they have their own agenda. They keep talking about the jury makeup, and what people don't understand, and maybe they do, and they don't want to admit it, is that there's a jury selection, right? It's called voir dire. And you have prosecutors in there and you have defense attorneys in there, and they're selecting the jury members that they don't want for whatever reason. It could be their occupation, as Steve Hilbig mentioned, teachers. It could be, different reasons of why. It could be law enforcement. I remember when I would get selected to be on the jury, and first thing they asked me is, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm a San Antonio police officer. Well, this is a case that a San Antonio police officer made an arrest, so of course the defense doesn't want me on that jury. So defense attorneys and prosecutors select the jury members that they don't want to serve, and they submit that stuff. So people need to understand that the jury is not selected by the prosecutors only, or selected by the judge. There's a process that both defense and prosecutors interview each potential jury member, and they ask them specific questions that they want to ask based on what type of case that they're handling. The felony cases, for example, you have 12 jurors, and misdemeanor and civil, you have 6 to 8 jurors that they interview during that process.
Willie Yang, you've been really generous with the time, and I know you have other things to do tonight, so thank you very much for coming on. I look forward to our visiting again soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, Jack.
Thank you.